The grand feast hall buzzed with the excited chatter of 1,000 new voices, a cacophony that only amplified the knot of apprehension in Arthur Finch's stomach. He sat rigidly on the edge of the Ravenclaw table, a silver and blue scarf feeling impossibly heavy around his neck. The high table, draped in an aura of ancient power, seemed miles away, as did the rest of the student body. He was just one boy, small and unremarkable, adrift in an ocean of legacy and laughter. Orphaned young, Arthur's upbringing had been a stark landscape of dusty tomes and stern pronouncements from a magical relative more concerned with lineage than warmth. Affection was a currency he'd never learned to trade in, achievement his only perceived worth. Hogwarts, he'd told himself, would be his chance. Here, his intelligence would be recognized, his thirst for knowledge understood. He would finally find a place where he belonged. Yet, as the last remnants of pumpkin juice were cleared and the first years dispersed into the labyrinthine corridors, Arthur felt the familiar chill of isolation settle upon him. He clutched his worn copy of A Compendium of Advanced Charm Theory, its pages a comforting weight. Other students, already forming cliques, bustled past, their easy camaraderie a stark contrast to his solitary march. He found solace in the quiet hum of the Ravenclaw common room, a haven of intellect where the soaring archways and endless shelves of books felt more welcoming than any friendly face. He spent his evenings poring over texts, his mind a sponge soaking up every available drop of magical lore, driven by a desperate need to prove his brilliance, to justify his existence in this extraordinary world. The first few weeks were a blur of new sensations, the scent of parchment and old magic in the library, the comforting weight of his wand, the dizzying exhilaration of his first successful Wingardium Leviosa. He excelled, as he always had. He was often the first to grasp complex spell work, his essays meticulous, his understanding of theory profound. Yet, the recognition felt hollow without connection. He was the quiet boy, the one who always knew the answer but rarely spoke above a murmur, his opinions often lost in the bolder pronouncements of others. But then there was Professor Quirrell. The defense against the dark arts class was held in a perpetually dim classroom on the first floor. Professor Quirrell, swathed in a perpetually violet turban that looked several sizes too large, was a study in nervous tic. His stutter was so pronounced it often rendered his sentences into an elaborate series of vocal hurdles, and he jumped at sudden noises, his eyes darting about as if expecting a goblin to leap out from behind the blackboard. Most students found him either pathetic or mildly amusing. Arthur, however, felt something else. From their very first lesson, a subtle, disquieting hum seemed to emanate from Quirrell. It wasn't a sound, not precisely, but a feeling, like the air itself vibrating with an undercurrent of barely suppressed power. While other first years struggled to master the simplest shielding charms, Quirrell's demonstrations, despite his stammering delivery, were always flawless, sometimes unnervingly so. Arthur noticed how a simple protego from the professor seemed to absorb not just the practice spell, but the very light in the room for a fleeting moment, leaving a tiny, flickering afterimage in its wake. It was too precise, too potent for a wizard so outwardly clumsy. The first truly odd incident occurred during a particularly chaotic practical lesson on rudimentary countercurses. Neville Longbottom, already prone to mishaps, somehow managed to send a jet of bright green light spiraling wildly towards the back of the room, far beyond the range of a first year's aim, faster and more intensely than a simple misfire should have allowed. It was heading straight for a stack of ancient, highly flammable tapestries. Panic rippled through the class. Before any student, or even Professor Quirrell, could react, the spell simply dissipated. Not deflected, not absorbed, but dissolved into nothingness midair, leaving behind only a faint scent of ozone. Quirrell gasped, his hand flying to his chest, his stammer more pronounced than ever. And then my word. CC careful, LL Longbottom. His eyes, however, lingered on the spot where the magic had vanished, a flicker of something unreadable, not fear, but a peculiar, almost knowing satisfaction, dancing in their depths before he quickly averted his gaze. Arthur, tucked away in a corner, had seen it. He'd seen the subtle tightening of Quirrell's jaw just before the spell winked out, the almost imperceptible tensing of his shoulders. It was as if the professor had willed it away, a silent, effortless act of magic disguised as a fluke. Later that week, while heading to the library, Arthur walked past Quirrell's classroom. The door was ajar, and he heard a low, guttural murmur emanating from within. It wasn't Quirrell's usual high-pitched stammer. This was deeper, resonant, a voice that seemed to vibrate with ancient authority. It spoke in a language Arthur didn't recognize, but it carried a chilling cadence, a hint of disdain and power that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. He paused, curiosity warring with a sudden, unfamiliar fear. Then a sharp, metallic clatter from inside, followed by Quirrell's familiar, reedy "oh dear." The deep voice vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the professor's nervous fumbling. Arthur, heart thumping, hurried away, but the image of that brief, terrifying voice echoed in his mind. He started observing Quirrell more closely. It was a subtle, almost unconscious habit at first, a Ravenclaw's natural inclination to analyze anomalies. He noticed the professor's lingering gaze on certain students, a touch too long, too calculating for a nervous man. He saw the faint, shimmering distortions in the air around Quirrell's turban on particularly humid days, like heat haze, even indoors. And there was the chill. A strange, unnatural cold that seemed to follow the professor, a creeping dread that left Arthur feeling drained and unsettled. It wasn't the natural chill of the dungeons or a drafty corridor. It was a cold that felt like it seeped into his bones, carrying with it a faint, metallic tang. He remembered a particularly potent dark arts historical text he'd found in a restricted section of the library, the Shadowed Arts, a compendium of unholy rituals. It had mentioned whispers of a rare, ancient form of magical manifestation, a cold fire or shadow magic that left behind an ethereal chill and a subtle scent of ozone. He had dismissed it as sensationalism at the time, but now, one afternoon, in the bustling Great Hall, Arthur watched as Quirrell, looking paler than usual, quickly exited through a side door near the staff table. As he passed a group of second years, a loose scroll of parchment slipped from his grasp. It landed face down, unrolling slightly to reveal a segment of a complex, interwoven diagram unlike any runic circle Arthur had ever seen. It pulsed with a faint, iridescent glow before Quirrell, with surprising swiftness for such a nervous man, scooped it up, his face momentarily contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury that sent a shiver down Arthur's spine. The stuttering, bumbling facade vanished for a split second, replaced by something ancient and dangerous. The expression was gone in an instant, replaced by Quirrell's usual flustered apologies. But Arthur had seen it. That brief, chilling flash of malevolence, utterly incongruous with the professor's persona. It confirmed his growing suspicions. Quirrell was not just nervous or clumsy. There was a secret here, a deception far deeper than a simple case of stage fright. That night, Arthur didn't open his charms theory book. Instead, he pulled out a fresh roll of parchment and his darkest ink. His hand trembled slightly, but his gaze was resolute. He began to list the anomalies, the inconsistencies, the moments when Professor Quirrell seemed to shed his bumbling skin to reveal something far more sinister underneath. The unusual strength of his magic, the deep voice, the chilling cold, the strange diagram, the flash of fury. It was all there, a pattern emerging from the chaos. He had always relied on books, on the established order of things. But no textbook explained this. No library archive held the answer to the unease that churned in his gut. This wasn't about grades or academic recognition anymore. This was about something fundamental, something profoundly wrong. Arthur Finch, the insecure, isolated Ravenclaw, had found his focus. He knew he wasn't imagining things. There was a wolf in sheep's clothing stalking the hallowed halls of Hogwarts, and for some inexplicable reason, Arthur felt an undeniable pull to unmask it. The question, then, wasn't if Quirrell was dangerous, but what he truly was and what grand, interdimensional scheme he was enacting under the very noses of the most powerful wizards in Britain. And Arthur, for the first time in his life, felt a prickle of something beyond fear, a nascent, unfamiliar courage, demanding answers. The unsettling clang of the great hall doors still echoed in Arthur Finch's mind, a week after the Halloween feast and the disastrous troll incident. Professor Quirrell's terrified stutter had been painfully convincing, but Arthur couldn't shake the memory of the man's uncharacteristically swift dash down the corridor, nor the oddly knowing glint in his eyes that had seemed to contradict his panicky cries. He spent every spare moment in the library, not just on his Ravenclaw assignments, but poring over ancient texts and obscure magical lore, searching for answers he wasn't even sure he understood the questions to. The official story, of course, was that the troll had been an unfortunate accident, a result of someone leaving a door ajar. But Arthur's logical mind rebelled. A fully grown mountain troll just wandered into Hogwarts, bypassed all its ancient wards, and happened to find its way to the girls' bathroom? It reeked of contrivance. And Quirrell, who usually looked as though a strong gust of wind might blow him over, had returned from his search looking merely frazzled, not physically taxed from battling a 12-foot beast. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. He knew he couldn't keep this to himself, yet the idea of voicing his suspicions to any of the professors, especially Dumbledore, filled him with dread. He was a first year, a nobody, prone to overthinking. They would dismiss him as an imaginative, if slightly paranoid, child. No, he needed someone else, someone who might actually listen. Someone who saw things differently. His gaze drifted across the library, past the huddle of Hufflepuff studying potions, past the whispering Slytherins, until it landed on a flash of red and gold amidst a pile of dusty tomes. Elara Vance. She was wrestling with an essay on the historical uses of polyjuice potion, her brow furrowed in concentration, a stray lock of fiery red hair escaping her meticulous braid. Elara was everything Arthur wasn't, boisterous, straightforward, and possessed of a healthy disregard for rules when something felt important. Perfect. Taking a deep breath, Arthur gathered his courage, the worn leather of his research book feeling like a shield. He walked over, trying to appear casual, failing miserably. "Elara," he whispered, acutely aware of Madame Pance's eagle eye. She looked up, startled, her green eyes widening slightly. "Finch? What's up? You look like you've seen a ghost. Or found a misplaced comma in a spellbook." She grinned, a flash of genuine warmth. Arthur offered a weak, lopsided smile in return. It's about Quirrell. And the troll. I don't think it was an accident." Elara's grin faded, replaced by an expression of genuine curiosity. She leaned in conspiratorially. "Go on," she prompted, her voice barely audible. Arthur quickly, but precisely, laid out his observations, Quirrell's swift, uncharacteristic movement, the odd glint in his eye, the improbable sequence of events surrounding the troll. He even mentioned the constant, subtle unease he felt around the defense professor, a prickling sensation that went beyond Quirrell's nervous stammer. Elara listened intently, her brow furrowed, occasionally nodding. When he finished, she didn't scoff. Instead, a spark of adventure lit her eyes. "You know, I thought it was a bit off too," she admitted. Harry and Ron were so focused on Hermione, they didn't really think about how the troll even got in. And Quirrell, he always looks like he's about to faint, but then he pops up everywhere. "I saw him coming out of the restricted section corridor last Tuesday, looking shifty. Thought it was just me." Arthur felt a surge of relief so profound it almost made him dizzy. He wasn't alone. He was near the restricted section, he pressed, his voice gaining a newfound urgency. "At what time?" "After dinner, I think. I was heading back to the common room after losing a game of gobstones to Fred and George, and there he was, scurrying away like a beetle. Didn't even stammer when he saw me, just gave a quick nod and vanished around the corner." This was crucial. The restricted section. Combined with the recent Gringotts break-in Harry Potter had mentioned, a break-in where a vault had been emptied just before someone arrived to retrieve its contents, a vault that contained something Nicholas Flamel had entrusted to Dumbledore's care. Arthur's mind raced, connecting the fragmented pieces. "We need to follow him," Arthur declared, the words tasting strange and exhilarating on his tongue. This was hardly the kind of logical, predictable action he usually took. Elara's presence made it feel less like reckless abandon and more like a necessary step. Elara's eyes glinted. "Now you're talking, Finch." "But how?" "He's a teacher." They spent the next few days in a state of heightened alert, turning their casual observations into a more systematic surveillance. It was surprisingly difficult. Quirrell was like a shadow, often appearing and disappearing in unexpected places. They learned his schedule, noting the brief windows between classes when he might be free. They ate quickly at dinner, lingering near the entrance hall or the staff table, pretending to be engrossed in conversation while subtly watching the defense professor. One evening, after the last students had left for their common rooms, they finally had their chance. Quirrell, his turbaned head bowed, slipped out of his office door, not heading for the staff room or the Great Hall, but moving towards the third-floor corridor. The Forbidden Corridor. "This is it," Elara whispered, her hand instinctively grabbing Arthur's arm, a jolt of nervous excitement passing between them. They followed at a cautious distance, Arthur's heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped snitch. The corridor was unnervingly silent, the only sound the distant hoot of an owl and their own hushed footsteps. Quirrell moved with an unnatural grace, his usual stammering gait replaced by a fluid, almost predatory stride. He seemed to glide through the dim light, a flicker of something dark and ancient clinging to his form. They watched from around a corner as Quirrell reached the forbidden door. He didn't fumble with the key. Instead, he simply extended a hand, and a faint, shimmering ripple passed over the ancient wood. No, not a ripple. It was like the air itself distorted, the very light bending around his outstretched fingers for a split second. Then, with a soft click that seemed impossibly loud in the silence, the door swung inward. Before Quirrell could slip inside completely, a low, guttural growl rumbled from within, shaking the very stones of the castle. It was deep, primal, and terrifying. Elara gasped, tugging Arthur back with surprising force. "Fluffy," she mouthed, her eyes wide with fear. Quirrell froze, a barely perceptible tremor running through his body. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the empty corridor with a chilling intensity that sent a shiver down Arthur's spine. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met across the distance, or so Arthur imagined. The glint was there again, no longer just knowing, but calculating. Then, with an almost imperceptible flick of his wrist, Quirrell threw something small and dark into the room, a sound like distant chimes following its trajectory. The growl instantly subsided, replaced by a deep, contented sigh. And in that moment, the door closed, leaving only the oppressive silence and the lingering scent of something strange and faintly metallic in the air. Arthur and Elara scrambled back, not daring to breathe until they were halfway down the next corridor, their chests heaving. He has something to get past, Fluffy," Elara stammered, her face pale. "He was trying to get in there." Arthur's mind, though still reeling from the fright, snapped into focus. The Gringotts break-in. The Philosopher's Stone. The Forbidden Corridor. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Quirrell wasn't just after something. He was after the something, the legendary stone that granted immortality and limitless wealth. And he had already breached the first, most terrifying defense. "The stone," Arthur whispered, the word a stark realization. "He's after the Philosopher's Stone." He looked at Elara, his initial fear now solidified into a grim determination. And if he can get past Fluffy, he might get to it sooner than anyone expects. The implications were staggering. If Loki, disguised as Quirrell, acquired the stone, his interdimensional plans could become an unstoppable reality. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on Arthur, but strangely, it didn't crush him. Instead, it ignited a spark of something new, courage. He knew, with absolute certainty, that they couldn't let that happen. The game had just become deadly serious. The late autumn air hung heavy and damp around Hogwarts, the castle stone absorbing the chill and exuding a faint, earthy scent. Arthur Finch, shoulders hunched against a sudden gust that rattled the Great Hall's stained glass windows, felt a familiar knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. It wasn't the weather, nor even the daunting stack of charms essays awaiting him. It was Professor Quirrell. Since their initial foray into the Forbidden Corridor, Arthur and Elara had maintained a heightened vigilance. They exchanged hushed whispers in the library, traded knowing glances across the dinner table, and subtly tracked Quirrell's movements, his quick, darting trips to the third-floor corridor late at night. The occasional flicker of unnaturally cold air emanating from his office, the way his eyes, when he thought no one was looking, seemed to hold an ancient, calculating depth utterly at odds with his nervous stutter. "He's getting bolder, Arthur," Elara had whispered just that morning, her fiery red hair a stark contrast to the pale parchment they pretended to study. "I saw him talking to a portrait, a very old, grumpy-looking knight. He wasn't stuttering at all." And the knight looked intimidated. Arthur's quill had paused mid-stroke. Intimidated? A portrait. He'd frowned. Perhaps it's just his unique way of engaging with the castle's history. But even as he said it, he knew it was a weak excuse. Quirrell's oddness was escalating, twisting from eccentricity into something genuinely unsettling. Their next defense against the dark arts lesson was where Quirrell's shift truly revealed its sinister edge. The classroom, usually smelling faintly of old parchment and the professor's peculiar incense, was different. Dust motes danced in the slivers of weak sunlight filtering through the high windows, illuminating a strange, almost ethereal haze that seemed to cling to the corners of the room. A large, intricate chalk circle had been drawn on the floor, its arcane symbols glowing with a faint, pulsing light. Quirrell, standing beside a covered cage that hummed with a low, disquieting vibration, cleared his throat. It was less a stutter, more a deliberate pause for dramatic effect. "Class," he began, his voice still reedy but now underscored by an uncharacteristic firmness. "Today, we move beyond theoretical knowledge. We shall assess your practical application of defensive magic against a unique dark entity." A murmur rippled through the first years. Elara caught Arthur's eye, a flicker of apprehension mixed with a familiar Gryffindor spark of curiosity. Arthur, however, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the draft. The symbols in the chalk circle, he'd seen similar patterns in obscure Ravenclaw texts, usually associated with advanced warding spells, not basic creature containment. "This creature," Quirrell continued, his gaze sweeping over the students, lingering for a fraction of a second on Arthur, then Elara, "is a boggart. However, it has been enhanced through a series of ancient Asgardian rituals. Ahem, that is to say, advanced dark magic. I have imbued it with a rudimentary form of sentience and an increased capacity for persuasion. Your task is not merely to banish it, but to contain it within this warding circle, without direct physical interaction. A test of your courage, your intellect, and your control." A boggart enhanced? Asgardian rituals? The words echoed in Arthur's mind. Loki. This wasn't just a lesson. It was a test. And Quirrell's mention of persuasion sent a shiver down his spine. Boggarts didn't persuade, they terrified. One by one, students were called forward. The covered cage was removed, revealing a swirling, inky black mass that immediately began to shift. It took the shape of giant spiders for Ron, Professor Snape for Neville, and for others, their deepest, most embarrassing fears. But unlike a normal boggart, this one didn't simply appear. It seemed to probe. It would flicker between shapes, testing reactions, before settling on the most potent fear. When it was Elara's turn, her face went pale as the boggart shimmered, then solidified into a grotesque, distorted version of her own reflection, its eyes hollow and filled with self-loathing. "You're a failure," it hissed, its voice eerily like her own, but twisted. "No one cares. You'll always be alone." Elara gasped, her wand hand trembling. This wasn't just a monster, it was her deepest insecurity, magnified and weaponized. Arthur saw her eyes well up, but then a stubborn light ignited within them. "Ridiculous," she roared, her voice cracking but firm. The boggart Elara stumbled, then transformed into a clown with oversized shoes, tripping over itself. The class laughed, and Elara, though still shaken, managed a wobbly grin. She had banished it, but the boggart seemed to recover faster than usual, flickering back to its original form within moments. Then came Arthur's turn. He felt a surge of adrenaline, his mind racing. He knew his fear, failure, obscurity, being cast aside. He braced himself. The boggart pulsed, then flowed into the shape of a crumbling, empty scroll, blank and forgotten, then a vast, dark library where all the books were unreadable, their pages bleached white. Finally, it coalesced into an older, stern version of himself, surrounded by shattered spectacles and broken quills, shaking his head in profound disappointment. "You squandered it," his doppelganger rasped, its voice a chilling blend of his detached relative and his own internal critic. "All that potential wasted. A clever boy, but a coward. Useless." The words struck Arthur like a physical blow. His mind reeled, a cold despair threatening to consume him. He saw a future where he was nothing, achieved nothing, and worse, failed to protect anything important. His wand felt heavy, his arm unresponsive. This boggart wasn't just showing him his fear, it was telling him he was that fear. This was Loki's persuasion. But then, he remembered Elara's struggling, determined roar. He remembered her words about Quirrell's boldness. This wasn't just a boggart, it was a magical attack designed to exploit their weaknesses, to identify potential threats, or powerful pawns. Loki was looking for something. And Arthur knew he couldn't let himself be broken. "No," he whispered, a spark of defiance igniting. I am not useless." He pointed his wand, not at the spectral version of himself, but at the very fabric of the warding circle. His gaze sharpened, recalling the intricate symbols. He didn't know the counterspell for this enhanced boggart, but he knew the structure of the magic holding it. "If you are trying to find my weakness," he declared, his voice gaining strength, "then I will show you my resolve." With a precise flick and swish, Arthur didn't cast ridiculous. Instead, he unleashed a simple Repello Muggletum charm, aimed not at the boggart, but at a specific point on the chalk circle. It was a low-level, almost mundane spell, designed to deter non-magical folk, but its true power lay in its symbolic disruption. It was an anti-intrusion charm, albeit a weak one. The effect was instantaneous and unexpected. The chalk symbols, instead of repelling the charm, flared violently, reacting to the intrusion of a spell designed to exclude. A ripple of pure magical feedback shot through the circle. The boggart Arthur shrieked, dissolving not into a comical figure, but into a cloud of agitated black smoke that swirled erratically, losing its cohesive form. The classroom's lights flickered. Quirrell gasped, not his usual nervous titter, but a sharp, almost guttural sound. His eyes, usually downcast, shot up, fixing on Arthur with an intensity that made the hairs on Arthur's neck stand on end. There was a brief, terrifying flicker in them, a flash of ancient fury and grudging respect. "Remarkable, Mr. Finch," Quirrell managed, his voice strained, a genuine tremor now. An unconventional approach. A clever subversion of the warding's purpose." He waved his hand, and the agitated smoke dissipated, the chalk circle's glow fading rapidly. Arthur, though shaking, felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with terror. He hadn't just banished the boggart, he'd actively disrupted Quirrell's carefully laid magical framework, however briefly. He'd seen a flash of the true power hiding behind the stutter. After class, the students dispersed, chattering about their experiences. But Elara and Arthur gravitated towards each other, finding a quiet corner near the Ravenclaw common room entrance. "He wasn't just testing us," Elara said, her voice low and fierce. "He was trying to break us. He put that much personal attack into it. That wasn't normal boggart behavior." "The Asgardian rituals," Arthur murmured, leaning against the cold stone wall, still feeling the lingering chill of his encounter. "Loki. He specifically enhanced it to be a psychological weapon. He wanted to see who could withstand it, who would reveal their deepest fears, or perhaps, who would show unexpected ingenuity." He looked at Elara, a new respect dawning in his eyes. "You were incredible, Elara. You fought through it." Elara shivered. "It took everything I had. But what you did, that wasn't in any textbook. You broke his spell without even knowing the right spell." "I targeted the ward, not the boggart itself," Arthur explained, his mind already dissecting the event. "The Repello Muggletum charm is about exclusion, about preventing something from crossing a boundary. It was antithetical to the containment magic. It created a magical dissonance, like hitting a perfectly tuned bell with a discordant note. It didn't destroy the magic, but it overloaded its immediate function. It was a gambit. A shared silence fell between them, heavy with the implications. Quirrell's power was far beyond what they, as first years, could comprehend. And his intentions were unequivocally malicious. He wasn't just eccentric, he was dangerous. "He saw you," Elara said, her voice barely a whisper. "When you broke his trap. He saw you, Arthur. Like he finally understood who you are." Arthur nodded slowly, his gaze distant, remembering the flash in Quirrell's eyes. A cold, knowing intelligence that saw right through him. "And he saw you too, Elara. You were the first to really fight back against the enhanced Boggart. We're on his radar now." Their alliance, forged in uncertainty and shared suspicion, now solidified into something far more urgent. They were not just curious observers, they were active participants, targets even. They had pushed too far, learned too much. "So what now, clever boy?" Elara asked, her eyes narrowed, a steely resolve replacing the last vestiges of fear. "He knows we know something. We can't just go to Dumbledore. He might not believe us, not without hard proof, and what if Quirrell covers his tracks? What if he's already too powerful?" Arthur pushed himself off the wall, a new determination setting his jaw. His usual academic insecurity was overshadowed by a primal need for answers, for protection. He felt a nascent courage born not from recklessness, but from a profound understanding of the threat. "We need more than just observations," Arthur said, his voice quiet but firm. "We need to understand what Loki is doing, not just that he's doing it." He talked about Asgardian rituals, and he mentioned the Philosopher's Stone is guarded on the 3rd floor. There has to be a connection. He paused, then looked at Elara, his gaze unwavering. "And if he knows we're onto him, then we need to find out his true intentions before he decides to deal with us, permanently." The words hung in the air, a chilling promise of the dangers to come. They were no longer playing detective. They were in a race against a God of Mischief, and the stakes were their lives, and perhaps the fate of the Philosopher's Stone itself. Arthur's mind, usually seeking the safety of knowledge, now craved action, compelled by a terrifying intuition. He had to trust his instincts and Elara more than ever. The game had truly begun. The lingering scent of burnt ozone still clung to Arthur's robes, a phantom reminder of the trap Quirrell had sprung. He sat hunched over a heavy, leather-bound tome in a forgotten alcove of the library, the pages filled with fading diagrams of ancient runic symbols. Opposite him, Elara gnawed on a quill, her brow furrowed, a rare stillness about her. The air between them was thick with unspoken questions, punctuated only by the rustle of Arthur's turning pages. "It wasn't normal magic, Elara," Arthur finally murmured, tracing a complex symbol with his fingertip. "Not like the spells Professor Flitwick teaches, or even the dark arts books I've glanced at in the restricted section. It was raw, powerful, but also disorienting. Like my mind was being twisted." Elara shuddered. "I know what you mean. The illusions, they felt too real. Not just visual, but like they dug into your head. And the way Quirrell vanished? Like smoke. Not disapparition. Something else." Arthur nodded, a flicker of excitement battling with the fear in his gut. This was it. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and seemingly disparate, were beginning to align. "Remember the shimmer we sometimes saw around him?" The way his voice occasionally had an echo, a strange resonance, even before the stutter was so pronounced. He flipped to a section detailing forgotten magical cultures. "I've been reading about ancient civilizations, long before the Ministry of Magic established its rules. Magic was different then. More elemental. More divine." He paused, pushing his spectacles up his nose, his eyes wide with a terrifying realization. There's a common thread in many myths. Trickster gods. Beings of immense power, often associated with illusions, shape-shifting, and sowing discord. They don't wield wands, they are magic. Elara's eyes widened, her quill forgotten. "A god? Arthur, you can't be serious. We're talking about a defense against the dark arts, Professor, not something out of an old storybook." But what if he is something out of an old storybook? Arthur pressed, his voice barely a whisper. Think about it. Quirrell's constant feigned nervousness. The way he deflects questions. His apparent weakness, which is clearly a facade after what we saw in the corridor. And the sheer power he unleashed on us. It wasn't a wizard's power. It felt older, colder. And that shifting voice, the illusions, it's all described here. He pointed to a drawing of a serpentine figure with cunning eyes. The Vanir, the Aesir. Norse mythology. There's one particular figure, known for his deceit, his ability to change form, his hunger for artifacts of immense power. His finger trembled as he finally landed on the name. Loki, the God of Mischief. Elara stared at the name, then back at Arthur, a dawning horror on her face. Loki? You think Quirrell is Loki? Her voice was thick with disbelief, yet a chilling logic was starting to set in. It made more sense than any dark wizard theory they'd cooked up. It fits, Elara, Arthur said, his voice gaining conviction. It explains everything. His strange magic, the way he seemed to manipulate our minds in the trap, the sheer scale of the danger. He's not working for Voldemort, not really. He's here for himself. And the Philosopher's Stone, it's not just about immortality or gold for him. It's about fundamental power. Power to transcend realms, to reshape reality, perhaps even to restore himself to his former glory, or for some grand interdimensional scheme we can't even begin to fathom. The implications were staggering. They weren't fighting a wizard, but a deity. A god. The very thought sent a tremor through Arthur, threatening to overwhelm him. His brilliant mind, so accustomed to cataloging and categorizing, struggled to process this level of threat. He was just a first year, a bookworm who preferred the company of dusty scrolls to actual people. How could he possibly hope to face down a god? So, what do we do? Elara asked, her voice quiet but firm. Her initial shock was giving way to her inherent Gryffindor bravery. We can't just let him get the stone, Arthur. If what you say is true. If what I say is true, Arthur finished, his gaze distant, then the entire wizarding world, perhaps even other worlds, could be in peril. He closed the book with a thud, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the quiet library. His hands were shaking. He wanted to retreat, to bury himself in more books, to pretend he hadn't uncovered this monstrous truth. But he couldn't. The vision of Quirrell's sinister smile, the memory of Elara's terrified face during the trap, spurred him forward. He needed help. Not just knowledge, but something more. He needed wisdom, guidance. Someone who wouldn't dismiss him as a hysterical first year, someone grounded and observant. His mind immediately went to Professor Sprout. Her kind eyes, her gentle but firm demeanor, the way she had always encouraged patience and understanding. He remembered her words during their last herbology class about how even the smallest seed held immense potential, and how the deepest roots often found the most secure ground. We need to talk to Professor Sprout, Arthur declared, the words feeling alien on his tongue. Confronting an authority figure, especially with such an unbelievable story, was a terrifying prospect for him. Elara blinked. Professor Sprout? Not Dumbledore? Or McGonagall? They're too close to the direct problem, Arthur explained, rubbing his temples. Dumbledore trusts Quirrell, or seems to. And McGonagall, she's formidable, but perhaps too focused on rules and order to believe in a Norse god wandering the corridors. Sprout, she's different. Observant. Grounded. And she sees things. I think she might have some of the hidden truths we need. The journey through the dimly lit corridors to the Hufflepuff common room felt like an odyssey. Each shadow seemed to lengthen. Each distant creak sounded like a lurking threat. Arthur's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anxiety. He rehearsed his words, then dismissed them, then rehearsed them again. He was acutely aware of how insane he sounded. A first-year Ravenclaw claiming their defense against the dark arts teacher was the God of Mischief. It was preposterous. Yet, he knew it was true. They found Professor Sprout in her office, a warm, earthy space filled with the scent of damp soil and blooming plants. She was tending to a wilting mandrake seedling, murmuring softly to it. She looked up, her spectacles perched on her nose, a gentle smile on her face that faded slightly as she saw the grave expressions of her unexpected visitors. "Mr. Finch, Miss Vance," she said, her voice calm. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Everything all right?" Arthur swallowed hard, his voice catching in his throat. Elara, sensing his struggle, stepped forward slightly. "Professor, it's about Professor Quirrell. We've learned something truly alarming." Sprout's gaze sharpened, her eyes moving between the two of them. "Alarming? Do tell." Arthur took a deep breath, forcing himself to speak, his usual stammer more pronounced than ever. He's not who he seems, Professor. His magic isn't wizarding magic. It's older, more powerful. We believe he's a god. Loki, the Norse god of mischief." Silence descended upon the room, broken only by the soft drip of water from a potted fern. Sprout's gentle smile had vanished completely, replaced by an expression of profound gravity. She didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss them. Her eyes seemed to look beyond them, into some distant memory or contemplation. "A god, you say?" she finally murmured, her voice laced with a quiet intensity Arthur had never heard before. "Loki. That is, a name long forgotten in these halls, but not entirely. There are legends whispered among the very foundations of Hogwarts of beings who tread upon our world from realms beyond. Beings whose power could unravel the tapestry of existence." Arthur felt a surge of relief, followed by a fresh wave of terror. She believed them. Or at least, she was taking them seriously. "He's after the Philosopher's Stone," Elara blurted out. "Not for Voldemort, we think, but for himself. For a different kind of power. Interdimensional power." Sprout slowly put down her watering can, her gaze returning to Arthur. "And how did you come to this extraordinary conclusion, Mr. Finch?" Arthur, emboldened by her serious demeanor, explained his deductions, the ancient texts, the subtle shifts, the nature of the trap, the sheer ambition that felt too grand for a mere dark wizard. He spoke with a quiet intensity, his brilliant mind laying out the evidence with meticulous detail. When he finished, Sprout sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "What you describe, Arthur, is indeed a threat of cosmic proportions. The Philosopher's Stone, it is a magnificent artifact, capable of wonders. But in the hands of a being like Loki, its potential for harm is unimaginable." She paused, her eyes glinting with a shrewd intelligence. "Hogwarts has always stood as a bastion against darkness, Arthur. But its defenses are not always what they seem. Sometimes, the greatest protections lie not in overt spells, but in the nature of belief, of desire, of the very fabric of magic that binds us." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "The stone is guarded, yes. By powerful enchantments, by clever puzzles. But its ultimate safety, the final hurdle Loki must overcome, is not a test of strength, nor a challenge of wits against a wizard. It is a test of heart, of true understanding. The stone does not simply give its power, Mr. Finch. It must be seen for what it is, and for what it is not. And only someone pure of heart, someone who desires it not for its power, but for something else entirely, could ever truly possess it." Arthur's mind reeled. A test of heart? A true understanding? What could that mean? Sprout had confirmed the danger, confirmed the impossibility of Loki's identity, but she hadn't given him a direct answer. Instead, she had offered a cryptic hint, a philosophical challenge. He knew what he had to do next, but the path was far from clear. "What else, Professor?" Arthur pressed, his voice urgent. "Is there anything else we should know?" Professor Sprout's gaze was piercing, filled with a mix of warning and encouragement. "Only this, Mr. Finch. Even the most ancient and powerful beings have their blind spots. Their arrogance can be their undoing. Loki may be a god of mischief, but he is still bound by certain truths. And remember this, true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And sometimes, the most dangerous weapon against deceit is a clear, unyielding heart that knows its own truth." She gave them a long, searching look, then stood up, signaling the end of their audience. "Now, it is very late. You two should be in your beds. But know this, Arthur. What you have discovered is a truth that many would shy away from. And the final step, the true understanding of what protects the stone, lies closer than you think, but it requires more than just intelligence. It requires a different kind of vision entirely. Arthur and Elara left Sprout's office, the weight of her words settling heavily upon them. They had confirmed their suspicions and gained a cryptic, terrifying hint. The Philosopher's Stone was guarded not just by magic, but by a riddle of the soul. And Loki, a god of lies and illusions, was about to face a protection he might never comprehend. Arthur knew now that the confrontation was inevitable. The future of Hogwarts, perhaps even the world, rested on two first years and their ability to decipher a riddle of desire and truth, one that Loki would surely fail to see. The chill of the underground chambers bit through Arthur's robes, but it was a cold he barely registered, consumed as he was by a burning mix of fear and resolve. Beside him, Elara Vance's hand was firm on his arm, her grip a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of his thoughts. Professor Sprout's quiet words echoed in his mind. Trust your instincts, Arthur. Knowledge is a seed, but courage is the sunlight that makes it grow. They stood before the ominous three-headed dog, Fluffy. The giant beast's snores rumbled through the stone passage, a monstrous, off-key lullaby. Loki must have used something to get it to sleep, Elara whispered, her eyes darting around. Maybe a flute? Arthur scanned the chamber, his eyes lingering on a dusty, enchanted flute lying carelessly near Fluffy's largest head. There, he said, pointing with a trembling finger. He must have dropped it in his haste. He's getting impatient. Elara, ever the Gryffindor, didn't hesitate. She tiptoed forward, her movements surprisingly graceful for a girl her age, plucked the flute and began to play a hesitant, reedy tune. Fluffy's snores deepened, his massive head sinking further onto his paws. No, Arthur urged, and they scrambled through the trapdoor. They landed with a thud on something soft and squishy. Devil's snare. Elara shrieked as the slimy tendrils began to writhe around their ankles, pulling them down. Panic flared, but Arthur forced it down. Relax, he gasped, remembering a footnote in 1,000 magical herbs and fungi. It despises light. Lumos solum, Elara yelled, pointing her wand. A brilliant beam of sunlight burst forth, scorching the plant. The tendrils recoiled with a pained screech, releasing them. They tumbled onto the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. That was too close, Elara muttered, brushing slime from her robes. What's next? A room filled with hundreds of flying keys awaited them. Their wings buzzed like an angry swarm of golden hornets. Loki, in his arrogance, had made the challenge obvious. Find the right key to open the distant, locked door. Arthur's sharp eyes immediately noticed one key. It was larger, its wings a darker, burnished gold, moving with a slightly different rhythm, almost, guiding. That one, he pointed, his heart pounding. It's older, heavier. Loki would use something ancient, something with a trace of his true magic, disguised. How are we supposed to catch it? Elara asked, watching the chaotic dance of metal wings. You're a seeker, aren't you? Arthur said, a rare grin touching his lips. Like a snitch, but slower. I'll provide a distraction. He waved his wand, casting a series of simple flippendos at the closest keys, sending them scattering in disarray. Elara, seizing the moment, leaped onto a nearby broomstick that Loki had left behind, again, underestimating their inventiveness, and shot into the air, weaving through the metallic swarm with surprising agility. In a blur of motion, she snatched the key mid-flight. With a click, the next door opened, revealing a colossal chessboard. The pieces, as tall as themselves, were carved from black and white stone. Arthur felt a surge of adrenaline. This was his turf. Loki's a master strategist, he murmured, his mind already calculating. This won't be easy. We're the pieces, aren't we? Elara said, her hand on the cold flank of a black knight. Yes, and the white pieces are already waiting for us. Arthur stared, eyes darting over the board. It's a classic checkmate setup. He wants us to sacrifice ourselves pointlessly or make a mistake that leaves us vulnerable. His academic mind whirred, recalling historical chess matches, famous gambits. But this wasn't just a game. It was life or death. His gaze fell on Elara, her face set with grim determination. A new thought sparked in him, not from a book, but from the warmth of their shared journey. "Trust your instincts, Arthur." "Elara," he said, his voice firm, "I need you to be the Queen's rook. I'll be the King's bishop. We'll have to move carefully." He began to direct her, their voices hushed, calling out the moves, the stone pieces grinding against the floor as they shifted. Arthur found himself thinking less of the rules and more of the flow, predicting Loki's unseen moves, not just as a chess player, but as a manipulator. He saw the pattern of Loki's mind, a blend of arrogance and a desire to prove superiority. He made a bold, unexpected move, sacrificing a pawn that seemed crucial, but opened up a path for Elara. "Are you sure?" Elara asked, hesitating. "Trust me," Arthur replied, a new confidence in his voice. "Loki expects us to be logical, predictable. We need to be something else." In the end, with a desperate, coordinated thrust, Elara, as the rook, moved into position, and with a resounding crack, the White King fell, shattered into 1,000 pieces. The door behind them swung open. Relief washed over them, but it was fleeting. The next chamber was dark, save for the flickering light of a single enchanted lantern. In the center, a table held 7 bottles of potion. This was the final hurdle before the stone, the potion riddle. Arthur knew this was Quirrell's, or rather, Loki's, final, most devious mental test. "Only one is safe," Arthur murmured, approaching the table. "One to let us through, one to take us back, and 5 are poison." He read the parchment scroll. The riddle, intricate and poetic, spoke of nettles and giants, of darkness and light, of oblivion and advancement. His mind, usually so keen on such puzzles, felt a pressure he hadn't experienced before. This was not for points. "What do you see?" Elara asked, peering over his shoulder, her wand casting a lumos for extra light. Arthur took a deep breath. "The riddle. It's designed to distract with flowery language. But the key is in the effects. Loki wants to show off his intelligence, his poetic flair, but the purpose of these is purely practical." He pointed to a small, dark bottle at the end. "This one. Liquid night, oblivion's sigh. That's the poison." Too obvious. He moved to another, its contents sparkling. "Silver tears, the path to the dawn. The one to go back." He picked up a smaller, clear bottle. It smelled faintly of apples, a strangely innocuous scent. A breath of life to face the coming strife. "This is it. The one that allows passage through the flames." Elara looked at him, impressed. "How did you know?" "Loki's magic," Arthur explained, his voice low. "It's often subtle, deceptive. The riddle wants you to think of grand, esoteric solutions. But his goal is just to block us. The simplest, least assuming answer is often the one that functions." He drank the potion. It tasted like sunlight and autumn leaves. A warmth spread through him. "Let's go." They stepped through the shimmering curtain of black flame. The final chamber was vast, circular, and bathed in an ethereal, golden glow. In the very center stood the mirror of Ariste, majestic and ancient. But it wasn't the mirror that commanded their attention. It was the figure standing before it, his back to them. Professor Quirrell. He was no longer stammering, no longer twitching. His posture was ramrod straight, radiating an aura of chilling power. He turned slowly, a cruel, triumphant smile spreading across his face. "So, the little Ravenclaw and his Gryffindor lioness found their way through my little tests," Loki as Quirrell sneered, his voice now deep and resonant, utterly devoid of the nervous tremor Arthur had come to associate with him. "Impressive. For mortals. Though you've taken far too long." Arthur's blood ran cold. The transformation was complete. The nervous twitch, the stutter, the exaggerated fear, all a performance. Loki stood before them, a chilling parody of the professor, his eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. "Loki," Arthur breathed, his voice barely a whisper. Elara gripped her wand, her face pale but determined. "Indeed," Loki purred, stepping away from the mirror. "You truly are more observant than your peers, young Finch. Such a pity your intellect will only serve to witness your demise." He gestured vaguely at the mirror. "The stone is within, as you know. But only one who desires it, yet does not wish to use it, can retrieve it. He scoffed. A foolish ward, Dumbledore's sentimentality. I merely need to find a way to circumvent such a flimsy enchantment. He began to explain, his voice dripping with condescension, his true intentions spilling forth like venom. Voldemort? A petty wizard, a means to an end. The stone is not for his pathetic resurrection. It is for my grand designs. To restore what was lost, to conquer new realms, to ascend beyond even the Allfather's grasp. This world is merely a stepping stone, a convenient pawn in a far greater game. A flicker of green light emanated from him, a momentary distortion, revealing not Quirrell's face, but a glimpse of something far more ancient, far more powerful, before snapping back. Fear threatened to paralyze Arthur, but Professor Sprout's words, his journey with Elara, the shared trials, solidified his courage. He looked at Elara, her hand still steady on her wand, ready to fight. Not just knowledge, Arthur. Instinct. Trust. Friendship. You won't get it, Arthur declared, his voice trembling but firm. We won't let you. Loki threw back his head and laughed, a chilling, mirthless sound. And what will you do, little boy? Cast a few hexes? I am a god. Your magic is a parlor trick to me. He raised his hand, and a shimmering, green blade of pure energy materialized in his grasp. Arthur knew a direct magical confrontation was suicide. He remembered Dumbledore's explanation of the mirror, Quirrell's failure, and Loki's stated goal, to find a way to circumvent the enchantment. Loki was thinking of force, of trickery to use the stone. He wouldn't understand the nuance of desire. You're wrong, Loki, Arthur said, taking a step forward, drawing Loki's full attention. The mirror doesn't respond to force or even just desire. It responds to intent. You want to use the stone. You want its power. That's why you can't get it. Loki's sneer faltered slightly. And what do you know of such things, boy? I know that the purest desire isn't for power, but for protection, Arthur stated, looking directly into the mirror, letting his gaze reflect back his genuine desire. He wanted to protect his friends, protect this world, protect the stone from falling into Loki's hands. He focused not on having the stone, but on keeping it safe. As he looked, a heavy, blood-red stone, pulsating with soft light, materialized in his pocket. He could feel its warmth through the fabric. Loki's eyes widened. What trickery is this? He snarled, staring at the mirror, then at Arthur. He stepped before the mirror himself, his expression a mixture of confusion and fury. In the mirror, Loki saw himself, glorious and triumphant, wielding the Philosopher's stone like a scepter, magic crackling at his fingertips. But the stone did not appear in his pocket. It works because I don't want to use it, Loki, Arthur explained, holding up his hand, feeling the stone's weight. I just want to keep it from you. A primal roar erupted from Loki. The Quirrell facade cracked, revealing fleeting glimpses of pale, sharp features, eyes burning with a cruel, emerald light. You insolent child! You dare to outwit a god! Loki lunged, the green blade shimmering. Elara, without a moment's hesitation, yelled, "Stupefy!" A bolt of red light shot from her wand, slamming into Loki, but he merely shrugged it off, momentarily staggered, a look of profound annoyance on his face. Run, Elara! Now! Arthur screamed, pushing her towards the exit. Loki, momentarily distracted by Elara's spell, let loose a wave of emerald energy that slammed into the walls, making the chamber tremble. Arthur knew he couldn't outrun a god. He needed a diversion. Quickly, he focused, channeling his fear and newfound courage. Expecto Patronum, he yelled, remembering Dumbledore's lesson on the powerful charm, though he'd only ever seen it in books. A silvery mist erupted from his wand, coalescing into the shape of a magnificent, spectral raven, a reflection of his Ravenclaw spirit, his burgeoning courage. The raven flew towards Loki, its silent shriek momentarily stunning the god. Seizing the precious seconds, Arthur turned and sprinted towards Elara, who was already at the opening. As they burst back through the black flame, Arthur glanced back. Loki was regaining his composure, the raven Patronus dissipating, his face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. You haven't seen the last of me, Arthur Finch. Loki's voice boomed, echoing through the chamber. This is but one game, and the universe has many more boards upon which to play. They didn't stop running until they burst through the trapdoor and collapsed, breathless, in the corridor near the staff room. Dumbledore and Professor Sprout were already there, their faces etched with concern. Arthur. Elara. Professor Sprout rushed forward, her eyes scanning them for injuries. Dumbledore's gaze, however, was fixed on Arthur, a knowing twinkle in his eye. It seems, he said, his voice soft but resonant, that you two had a rather eventful evening. He glanced at Arthur's pocket, where the faint glow of the stone was just visible through the fabric. Arthur, still panting, managed a nod. The fear was subsiding, replaced by a profound sense of exhaustion and something else, a quiet, steady pride.